There's a story that reverberates far beyond Sweden or any single religion. The respect, or rather the blatant disregard, shown to sacred texts and religious symbols. Recently, the far-right politician Rasmus Paludan, originally from Denmark, was sentenced in Sweden to 4 months in prison for incitement to hatred. His crime? Burning a copy of the Quran in public in Malmo. Actions the court found to be unmistakable acts of hatred rather than mere criticism or political expression. And this sentence is notable not only for its legal implication, but also for the wider cultural message it sends. Sweden, a country known for its freedom of speech, took a firm stand here, drawing a line between free expression and deliberate incitement against a religious community. Paludan's actions were not just isolated provocations, but part of a larger trend we see today, a weaponizing of sacred texts, traditions, beliefs to foster division, attract attention, stir unrest. And these actions come at a real human cost, affecting communities across the world, destabilizing societies. First, it's essential to understand why respect for religious texts like the Quran, the Bible, the Torah, or other sacred scriptures is paramount. These texts are not just books. They are symbols of identity, heritage, deeply held values. For billions of people worldwide, such artifacts represent divine guidance, ethical frameworks, collective history, culture. Defacing or destroying them often communicates more than a political disagreement. It conveys contempt, not just for the religion, but for all those who follow it now and who have followed it. Throughout history, societies have often judged each other by how they treat religious beliefs outside their own. Examples abound, from the tolerant coexistence of religions in Andalusian Spain to the desecrations that led to violence and backlash, such as the pillaging of temples and churches during war. In the modern era, where society is increasingly diverse, respecting one another's symbols becomes even more essential for peaceful coexistence. Yet Paludan's actions aren't unique. We're witnessing a worrying rise in symbolic attacks on religious and cultural objects worldwide. In recent years, public acts of Quran burning have become flashpoints for tension, with similar incidents taking place in countries like Norway and France. And these actions have sparked global protests and significant diplomatic fallout. For instance, in 2023, repeated acts of Quran desecration in Sweden strained its diplomatic ties, especially with Turkey, which expressed outrage on behalf of Muslims worldwide. This tension even threatened Sweden's bid to join NATO, showing how a singular act can ripple out into international politics. We see other instances of similar disregard. In France, anti-Semitic graffiti on synagogues or memorials has sparked both anger and fear within Jewish communities. Just this past year, several high-profile desecrations of Holocaust memorials raised questions about the strength of anti-hate legislation and the willingness of authorities to protect these sites. Likewise, incidents in India of mobs desecrating mosques or Hindu temples show how religious intolerance is not limited to the West. It's an unfortunate global trend. And more than that, the religious intolerance that we see is repetitive. The same tropes about repression that you can read of in the 1880s under the Tsar Alexander III, blaming the Jews for the bomb that killed Alexander II. No evidence at all, but the rise of anti-Semitic discontent which led to the pogroms, and the same tropes being wheeled out by Hitler. One cannot ignore incidents targeting religious communities, even targeting Christian sites as well. In parts of the Middle East, historic churches and shrines have been destroyed during conflicts, sometimes as part of a broader effort to erase the cultural identity of Christian communities in those regions. Each of these actions isn't just an attack on a building or a book. They are an attempt to undermine communities to shake people's sense of belonging and to shake respect for their faith. It's crucial to recognise the legal boundaries that Sweden and other democratic societies are attempting to set. Most countries respect freedom of speech, but also recognise that such freedom has limits when it crosses into hate speech or incitement to violence. And Sweden's decision to imprison Paludan reflects this balance. The court's judgment suggested that his actions went beyond critique and ventured into dangerous territory that endangered social harmony, that set an example that it is wrong to follow. Here, the law served as a protective measure, not just for Muslims, but for Swedish society as a whole. And the challenge, of course, is maintaining this balance. Freedom of speech must allow for open discussion and a critique of ideas, including religious ones. But this freedom must be paired with responsibility. Symbolic violence, such as burning a sacred text, doesn't foster productive dialogue or understanding. It divides. It antagonizes. Ultimately, it harms communities. And it's worth noting that genuine criticism of religion can and should be done without resorting to acts of desecration. Intellectual analysis. Questions. Valid. Burning. Not valid. The fallout from incidents like these extends far beyond the local context. In our interconnected world, acts of symbolic violence such as Quran burnings do not remain isolated events. They are picked up by media worldwide, disseminated on social platforms, and soon become rallying points for larger political and social movements. For example, in the wake of these Quran desecrations, extremist groups often find new recruits by capitalizing on the narrative that the West disrespects Islam. It's essential, therefore, a security concern as much as a moral one, and on the diplomatic front, countries must tread carefully. Sweden's troubles with NATO are an example of how acts of religious contempt can weaken alliances, strain political relationships, and endanger our security. When a country gains a reputation for tolerating hate-based expressions, it risks losing the trust of other nations, particularly those with large religious populations. The world is watching and the stakes are high. The case of Rasmus Paludan is a sobering reminder of our responsibility towards one another in an increasingly diverse society. Religious symbols, whatever they may be, and texts, whatever they may be, are cornerstones for billions worldwide. And just as we respect one another, we respect their beliefs. To desecrate them is not only to reject the tenets of those faiths, but to actively damage the foundations of mutual respect that underpin peaceful, multicultural society. In a world where our actions are visible to everybody through social media, respect for such symbols is not just a personal ethic, but a social necessity. It's through this mutual respect that societies thrive, that religious freedoms are protected, and that peaceful coexistence of diverse beliefs become possible, that people reach out and start to understand one another. Paludan's imprisonment is not just about his punishment, it's a broader statement that in Sweden, as in any free and open society, respect for others and their beliefs is non-negotiable. I hope this is a reminder that genuine discourse and understanding are built not by destroying the symbols of others, but by engaging thoughtfully and respectfully with them.